College. Please thank and acknowledge his engagement and his team's engagement and him joining us today. Mr. Gerety.
Thank you, Connie, for that introduction, and I'd like to thank the Association for Enterprise Opportunity for holding this conference and for all the work that you do to advance microenterprise business and microenterprise lending. Let's start with facts that people in this room already know. Millions of Americans are employed by micro businesses. Self-employment and independent work are growing trends within our nation's labor market. As your research shows, microenterprises include the self-employed, a hairdresser, an accountant, or family businesses, a grocer, a food truck owner, or a housing and home repair contractor. Today, many are financed with credit cards, with cash from savings, or a second job. And even once an owner has established a business, he or she often has difficulty getting the necessary financing to expand and add employees. These are the baseline facts that this group has established, and helping us all understand the economic challenges and the economic opportunities is a critical first step. I'm particularly happy to be here today because last year, Treasury hosted the Small Business Capital Access Summit to examine these issues, and the Micro Capital Task Force is just the kind of follow-up that we had hoped to see. The task force work makes clear that microenterprises represent a powerful force in our national economy today, but this conference and the discussions here show that we are still in the early stages of a conversation with microenterprises and with the microcapital community. Just last week, Tommy Halevy and Ira Lieberman met with Treasury staff to discuss the preliminary findings of the task force. Let me say, the work that you have done so far is impressive, and we look forward to an ongoing dialogue with you over how best to support growth in microenterprise lending and leveraging the existing resources that this group has to offer and the programs that we already have in place. Some of the questions that we will want to ask are ones where we will need to learn from you. What strategies are already working to expand micro and small business lending? What is needed to increase private investment in micro-business lending and make that investment sustainable? Other questions we will need to ask with a focus on bringing together both public and private insight. How can we improve data reporting and sharing so progress and impact can be benchmarked? How do we balance a regulator's need to protect consumers and the market's need to charge a price that ensures cost recovery and profit? What are the most effective ways to leverage federal programs with private funding? And what's the most appropriate and effective role that Treasury and the administration can play as we move forward, given budget realities and capacity constraints in the industry? Treasury has already made significant effort to engage the micro-business community through both direct and indirect programs. Today, I'd like to just do two things. First, I want to highlight several of the programs that Treasury oversees and share with you some of our successes to date. These include the CDFI Fund, as well as newer initiatives like the Small Business Lending Fund and the State Small Business Credit Initiative. Second, I want to close by drawing your attention to some of our broader government efforts to support microenterprises, including the Jobs Act and an administration effort called Startup America, and our efforts to give new savings tools to employees of microenterprises through the recently announced MyRA program. Treasury's CDFI Fund provides significant support to Main Street business lenders, with over $150 million in annual grants to CDFIs, a large percentage of which focus on small and micro business lending. The CDFI Fund also recently launched a capacity building initiative called Scaling Up Microfinance for CDFIs in the microfinance sector. This initiative is aimed at expanding the capacity of CDFIs with a training and technical assistance program to help CDFIs decrease costs, build human capital, and improve the business models of participants. CDFIs supported by the fund have made nearly $400 million in microfinance loans and investments between 2003 and 2012. And in 2012 alone, nearly $110 million was invested by CDFIs in communities all across the country, from Queens, New York, to Harris, Texas, from Langlade, Wisconsin, to Miami, Florida. Each of you has vivid stories of the impact that microcapital can make, but let me offer two that were highlighted by some of our partners in this community. After being laid off and out of work for 3 years, Chef Tina Ferguson Rife opened her own barbecue restaurant. As business took off, Tina needed to buy new equipment, but was turned down for a loan everywhere she looked. The Opportunity Fund stepped in with a $20,000 Easy Pay loan, which, instead of requiring Tina to make fixed monthly payments, allowed her to repay her loan based on daily credit and debit card sales and pay more when her business was strong. Today, her restaurant is thriving. Members of this community know that the Opportunity Fund is a not-for-profit and one of California's leading microfinance providers. It provides a variety of products, including microloans for small businesses, micro-savings accounts, and community real estate financing. Since 1995, it has deployed $300 million into local communities, but for Tina and for her 11 employees, it was just one loan that made the difference. And right here in New Orleans, we have the story of Wes McWhorter, who fell in love with cycling 25 years ago, but in 2009 decided to take a leap into entrepreneurship. And in 2012, he opened Roulet, a bicycle repair and fitting business. He got his business off the ground with just a $15,000 SBA microloan from Accion, Texas. His business is to create personalized bicycles that are fitted to each of his customers, but he reports that he's not just interested in selling bicycles, he wants to build a community of bicycle riders. It's no need for me to tell you, but Accion, Texas manages the nation's largest microloan portfolio and provides a variety of loan products ranging from $500 to $50,000 in the microloan segment and small business loans from $50,000 to $250,000. They've made more than 14,000 loans totaling $160 million in 8 states since 1994. One of Treasury's newer programs to support Main Street lending is the Small Business Lending Fund, created as part of the Small Business Jobs Act in 2010. The Small Business Loan Fund, or SBLF, has invested $4 billion in 332 community banks and community development loan funds that collectively operate in 3,000 locations across the country. Our most recent data shows that these groups have increased their small business lending by $12.5 billion over a $33 billion baseline. The results are generated through two complementary mechanisms. First, they directly increase the capacity of local community lenders through capital investments. And second, they provide very strong incentives for these lenders to extend credit in the near term to small businesses in their communities. Overall, this program is expected to generate a positive return for taxpayers. And the results speak for themselves. Increases in small business lending are widespread, with 95% having increased their small business lending over baseline levels. And most participants report that their small business lending increases have been substantial, with 90% increasing small business lending by 10% or more. And overall, the median increase is 60%. As part of SBLF, Treasury has also invested $104 million in 51 nonprofit community development loan funds. These nonprofit loan funds play a critical role in distressed communities across the country that lack access to mainstream financial services. They offer microloans to entrepreneurs, providing mezzanine debt to growing small businesses, and financing community facilities like charter schools and health clinics. These groups have increased their small business lending by over $256 million beyond their baseline. And on average, over 70% of these loan fund portfolios are allocated to small business loans. In just the last year, community development loan fund participants increased their total lending by 10%, just in 1 year. Another new program is the State Small Business Credit Initiative. This is a $1.5 billion program that strengthens state programs that support lending and investing in small businesses. States expect to leverage each dollar in federal funding into $10 in new lending or investment for small businesses. So as a result, SSBCIs expect to generate $15 billion in lending or investment for small businesses. To date, participating states have supported well over 5,000 loans that might not have been occurred without SSBCI. 2/3 of these loans are less than $100,000, and nearly 80% of all SSBCI loans and investments were to small businesses with fewer than 10 employees. In its most recent quarterly report, SSBCI reported that state agencies accelerated their use of these funds in 2013, more than doubling the amount that was reaching borrowers when compared to the end of 2012. President Obama's FY 2015 budget requests an additional $1.5 billion for a second round of SSBCI, and I think this request reflects the administration's commitment to strengthening state capacity to engage local lenders and investors. Moving beyond the Treasury Department's programs, President Obama also signed the bipartisan Jumpstart Our Business Startups Act, known as the JOBS Act, one provision of which will help micro businesses and startups access capital through crowdfunding. The SEC is currently working on rules which will enable a national framework to allow small businesses to receive investments from individuals through regulated online platforms. President Obama also launched Startup America. It's an all-hands-on-deck effort to celebrate, inspire, and accelerate high-growth entrepreneurship throughout the nation. Leaders in the private sector joined the effort with the Startup America Partnership, an independent alliance of entrepreneurs, major corporations, and service providers that has already mobilized over $1 billion in business resources and aims to help as many as 100,000 startups in 3 years. Finally, I want to call your attention to an important new Treasury program that will help employees, like the ones who work for the businesses you serve, to prepare for their futures. The President, in his State of the Union address, instructed Treasury to create a new retirement savings account for working Americans. In response, Treasury is developing the MyRA program, which stands for My Retirement Account. This offers a simple, safe, and affordable way to save for retirement. It's a starter saving program. Workers will begin saving with a minimum contribution of just $25 and contribute just $5 or more every payday automatically through payroll deductions. The investment will be protected and backed by the U.S. government. It's intended to be especially useful for part-time or seasonal workers who may not qualify for employer-sponsored retirement plans. The program is completely voluntary, and employers only need to offer payroll deduction for their employees to be able to participate. Small employers can, with MyRA, help their workers begin to save for their future in a way that is simple, safe, and affordable. Connecting workers to savings, products like MyRA, are important ways we can help more Americans fully and effectively participate in the economy. Across all our efforts, we look forward to an ongoing dialogue about how the federal government can help better align our programs and policies with the leading edge of microfinance industry. To a large extent, the work of the Microcapital Task Force is really the beginning of the conversation, and one that we look forward to participating in with you and your colleagues. So thank you again for having us here today.
Mr. Secretary has agreed to take questions. There are mics in the floor here, so if anyone has a question, please come up to the mic.
No questions.
Well, I'm sure we have one. Come to the mic, please. I knew you wouldn't get away with that. That's from the secretary.
I wouldn't want it any other way.
Well, hi, I'm Lynn Cutler, Women's Opportunities Resource Center, and we are delighted to receive funding from the CDFI fund. I have a question. Many of us just came from the Small Business Administration